All right, this is the Voice of Motown Podcast. I'm Tyler Pepe.
And I'm Brandon Cork, and this is a WVU Sports Podcast by two suffering WVU fans.
All right, guys, thank you for listening today. Please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like getting your podcasts. Today, we are going to be breaking down the Backyard Brawl. We'll tell you what we're most excited for heading into week 1 of college football, and we'll give you some fun over-unders for the WVU versus Pitt game. And to help us break down the Backyard Brawl, we have our very special guest, Alan Saunders. Alan, thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah. If you guys aren't familiar with his work, he's a journalist for Pittsburgh Sports Now, Steelers Now, and AP Sports. So it's an honor to have him on. Let's just dive right into it. So the Backyard Brawl is back. What's the buzz like in Pittsburgh, man?
It's interesting because there's a lot going on this time of year. The NFL is just getting started too. And I think sometimes the start of college football season, especially because traditionally that first game is like that, cupcake kind of thing. I always feel like college football, the start of it always kind of gets overlooked. Man, not this year. There is a buzz for sure around the city. And I just think the fan bases, having not played each other in so long, maybe it'll be different as we go through this, 4-year cycle, and it won't feel this way every year. But I think everybody's just really fired up and excited about getting to see this game again. Certainly feels that way here in Pittsburgh anyway.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely tell that both sides have been waiting for this game for way too long. I mean, we quoted a stat on our last podcast where WVU-Pitt tickets are like the third most expensive ticket in all of college football right now. Very exciting to see. What do you think Pitt's biggest advantage is in this game? What should WVU fans be worried about?
I think Pitt's biggest advantage in this game might not necessarily be Pitt's strength for the whole season, but I think Pitt's biggest advantage in this game is that they have 5 returning starters on the offensive line. And that is an extremely rare thing in college football. And I think when you think about sort of like the weird things that can happen in week 1 of a college football season, like, even if teams with individually talented offensive linemen, when you put it together the first time, sometimes it just doesn't click the way you thought it was going to. That's an unknown that is scary for a lot of coaches. And with Pitt having all 5 guys back, I just think for this game specifically, like they weren't even a world-beating offensive line last year. Like I don't think they're going to have the best offensive line in the ACC or anything like that necessarily. But just for game 1 to have all 5 guys back in the same spot, I just think it brings a level of comfort to the entire offense that most teams the first week of the season don't really have. And I definitely think this week that'll be an advantage for Pitt.
Yeah, I think we can relate to that because WVU also has 5 returning starters, and that's, what the WVU fan base keeps talking about as well, because we did not have a good year last year on our offensive line. And so, we keep talking about that too, that it's probably the most important position in football to have cohesion and everyone back. So we feel you there. So to flip the question, in your opinion, what advantages does WVU have over Pitt? What's Pitt's biggest concern?
Well, I think one of the things is that this is unfamiliar territory for most of these guys. Last year when Pitt was having its best season in program history, or at least 40 years of program history, it was a unexpected development. Everybody thought Pitt was going to be pretty good. Everybody thought Kenny Pickett was a pretty good quarterback. Nobody expected him to break all of Dan Marino's records, and no one expected him to win the ACC. Everything was throughout the entire season way above expectations. And I think now in this game, with Pitt coming off the season it had and West Virginia coming off the season that it had, all of a sudden that's flipped a little bit. I think there are a lot more expectations on Pitt in this game right now than there were really at any point last season when they had so much success. And it's different guys, it's not the same team. And so they've got to live up to those expectations that these guys didn't necessarily earn. That's coming from what Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison did last year. So I think that's an interesting sort of psychological part to this game. Will we see Pitt continue on the same trajectory now that they're a team that is expected to win, that is a big favorite at home in a rivalry game. That's not something we've seen from them to this point.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too.
Sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was going to say, looking at the matchups from WVU against Pitt, it's like WVU's strengths, our defensive line is our strength, and we're going up against an experienced offensive line. We have a new quarterback and young, inexperienced receivers outside of one or two guys going up against probably Pitt's weakest thing. So our biggest question marks are, Pitt's going up against Pitt's weaknesses, and then our biggest strengths are going up against Pitt's strengths. So it's a really hard one for me as a WVU fan to kind of go in and say, we're going to really go in here and roll. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think if WVU has a shot, it's just going to be on emotions and, kind of upsetting those expectations, like you said, is what's going to get WVU over the hump.
Yeah, I'm with you.
How do you feel about Kedon Slovis? Do you think that he can take over from Kenny Pickett and take you guys back to the ACC championship game?
I think Kedon Slovis is a very talented player with a lot to prove. And sometimes that works really, really well. And as you've seen, it doesn't always, I think that's why he ended up winning this quarterback battle. And I think Nick Patty is a very good college quarterback. He's obviously not the same kind of NFL potential that Slovis is. And that's why you got to go with that guy. You got to see if he can do what he's capable of, because if he can, like if Kedon Slovis comes in and plays to his full potential, Pitt's going to be very close to winning the ACC, if not doing it, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. I mean, that's how good he can be. He can also be a lot less good than that. And, there's question marks there. It's not like he's some kind of sure thing or proven commodity, but I think you like the upside and the talent, and that you hope that he can live up to it if you're Pitt and you're Pat Narduzzi. And the other nice thing that Pitt has is that they're not – if it goes very badly, they're not married to him. They have a very experienced backup who is a pretty good college quarterback. So it's not like their season is over if Kedon Slovis doesn't turn out to be the player that he's hoped to be able to be. They have another option. So I think they're in about as good of a place as they can be, considering, you're replacing a player the caliber of Kenny Pickett. You're almost always not going to feel as good at that position as you did a year ago. But, I think they've done a pretty good job of putting themselves to give themselves a good chance of having pretty good quarterback play this year.
Do you have concerns about Slovis? Like, I know his first year, he seemed to do extremely well at USC. Second year was a little down. Third year was better, but shortened. So, do you feel like there's a chance that he might be a little overhyped?
I think the arm talent is real. I don't have any question about that. He's not that mobile. And so I think, one of the things that hurt him was that USC's offensive line was not particularly good. And he did not do, in addition to not being mobile, I don't think he did a great job of dealing with the pressure, in sort of the mental processing kind of ways, and taking care of the football and taking what's available to you all the time. Sometimes that's a maturity thing, and sometimes that's just things that quarterbacks aren't that good at. So, it's certainly possible for him to improve in those areas. I think he'll probably get better offensive line play. I also think Pitt is just going to run the ball a lot more this year than they did last year. And really, they're not going to need Kedon Slovis to be Kenny Pickett-like, because they're not going to throw the ball anywhere near as much as they did last year. They really like their rotation at running back. They have three guys in Vincent Davis, Israel Abanikanda, and Rodney Hammond that they all really like. And I think all of them can be really good running backs. And so they want to get them all the ball. And when you have three proven guys at running back that you want to get to the ball, and a quarterback that's like, well, maybe he's good, well, then you just run the ball more. That's like a really easy decision to make, especially for a new offensive coordinator and Frank Signetti. So, I think they're just going to try to minimize the impact of the quarterback on the game compared to last year. And yeah, I think there are certainly some issues that Slovis, especially if you're looking at him as not just a college quarterback, but as an NFL draft prospect, like there's things he needs to be better at. And that processing is definitely one of them. But the arm talent is real, and I don't think anybody has any questions about that.
Yeah, Kedon Slovis, I mean, he's got over 50 passing touchdowns already, against Power 5 competition. So he seems to, proven that he does have the talent. And I'm actually going to jump down in our questions because you brought up something I wanted to talk about later. But it does seem like, Pitt is going to run the ball more this year based on Pat Narduzzi's comments and having a new offensive coordinator now. And, I was looking at something. They were towards the bottom in play action last year because, what was it? Whipple, was that your offensive coordinator last year? He just wanted to keep slinging it, every chance he got. And, it sounds like that you're pretty confident you guys have the personnel to have a successful running game. Do you think that's true?
I do. I think they can run the ball. And yeah, when you're a pass first team, and I think they passed about 60 some percent of the time last year, you don't want to run play action. Like the run is the surprise, right? Instead of running play action, you run draws, right? That's sort of what you do. Instead, you get them thinking pass, and then the run is a surprise. So they did a lot more of that. They were also in the shotgun a good bit last year. I think they'll probably be under center a little bit more. They really like their tight end. Gavin Bartholomew was a really solid freshman last year, and I think can be even better in his sophomore year. And so I could see some two running back sets. You have a good tight end, you have a very experienced offensive line. Yeah, I think they're going to run the ball, and I think they're going to be pretty good at it. The other thing is, Pat Narduzzi is a defensive coach. He gives his offensive play callers a good amount of latitude to do whatever they want. He hires experienced offensive coordinators for that reason. But if you let him call the offensive plays, I'm not sure they would throw ever. Like, that's just his personality. He wants to keep his defense off the field and keep that clock ticking. And he is an old school Big Ten, win the game 3-0 kind of guy. And so, yeah, that's just sort of the personality of the football team. I could certainly see him wanting them to get back to that a little bit.
And that would be interesting too. I'm going to jump down one more question as well. You mentioned Gavin Bartholomew, but you guys also added in Kanata Mumpfield. I might have butchered that, but
no, you nailed it.
Oh, awesome. But he had a tremendous year last year at Akron, freshman All-American, and taking over for Jordan Addison. That's going to be great. And for him being kind of a bigger receiver, and then Bartholomew being a tight end, it seems like running the I formation is just a natural fit, and then running play action to those type of guys. So do you feel the hurt of losing Jordan Addison being lessened a little bit by Bartholomew having another year and Mumpfield joining the team?
Yeah, and it's actually, I think everything that we're talking about there is a little bit related. We just spent a long time talking about how Pitt isn't going to throw the ball as much this year. And then it's wide receiver wants to transfer. I have a feeling those two things might be a little bit related. And, when you want to run the ball, but then you have this Bolitnikov winning wide receiver, like there's conflict there, right? As an offense, you're like, well, hey, we have to get Jordan Addison the ball. He's really good. But also, we want to run. Like, this is what we want our identity to be. And so I do feel like those two things were kind of in conflict this spring. And I think it's one of the reasons that Addison's not on the team anymore. But yeah, Mumpfield's a big receiver. Jared Wayne is an enormous receiver. And yeah, you got two big receivers and a good tight end and three running backs you like. Yeah, it seems like that's a running football team to me. And that I think that can be a good thing for them. They'll need to throw the ball, obviously, especially when you get into ACC, and there will be some teams that can move the ball on Pitt's defense. Specifically thinking about like Virginia, Miami, teams with really good quarterbacks. They're going to be harder to slow down. But I think Pitt should feel like this game specifically is probably a game where they can keep low scoring and just try to play that sort of Big Ten football and keep it a low scoring, low possession game and run the ball.
And that sounds like, something that might tie into our next question, where with West Virginia last year, we tried to do that against some of the more scary offensive teams in the Big 12, particularly Oklahoma, and our offense just completely sputtered out. We lost that game, 14-7, 17-7, something like that. It was the closest we've ever played Oklahoma, but It was just disappointing that we lost that way because we couldn't score points. And, we added in 2 big new offensive threats in JT Daniels and Graham Harrell. So, knowing West Virginia was kind of more of an anemic offense last year, do you see JT Daniels and Graham Harrell? Do they make West Virginia a little bit more scarier as a matchup for Pitt?
I think the thing that is the question mark there to me is the wide receiver talent. Because I think if you look at some of the games that Pat Narduzzi's defense has played against air raid style offenses, there's some success there. And Pitt's going to press. And they're going to push guys around the line of scrimmage. And their defensive line, is one of the best I've ever seen put together. It's so deep. They probably have 5 or 6 guys that are going to be NFL players on it.
Wow.
And so they're going to get to the quarterback and they're going to jam you at the line and not let you make rhythm throws, but you can get beat deep doing that. And there are some games in that history. If you want to go look at what Oklahoma State did with Mason Rudolph and James Washington against that game plan, it worked really, really well. They scored 1 million points in back-to-back games. I think that JT Daniels can be a Mason Rudolph. Does West Virginia have a James Washington? I'm not so sure. I don't know that they have that deep threat wide receiver that can make Pitt really pay for being in press coverage all day long. If they're able to show that, then they can probably connect on some of those deeper routes that the air raid is, sort of famous for. If not, I think they could struggle moving the ball because when you're an air raid team and you don't get into a rhythm, you end up in 3rd and long all the time. And that's where Pitt's defense is really good. That defensive line really gets after it, and they start to dial up some exotic blitzes and fuse coverages. And that's where turnovers happen. And that's what happened to Clemson last year, is that Clemson got themselves in a lot of 3rd and long, and DJ Uiagalelei, who's a very talented quarterback, he couldn't deal with the pressure, turned the ball over a bunch, and then the game turned into a blowout. And so I think that's the big key for West Virginia is getting into a rhythm and staying out of those 3rd and longs and then connecting on some of those deep passes. I think it really come down to how much can their wide receivers win against the Pitt secondary.
Yeah, you brought up the Pitt's D line. The 2 most impressive guys, I think, on your entire team are Cansey and Baldonado. Those guys are monsters on your defensive line, and the Mountaineer offensive line is going to have to play lights out to slow them down. So, you see them play every week. What makes those 2 guys so good?
I think it's not just those 2 guys. That's really, this is a kind of defensive line that just sort of comes at teams in waves. And, I think Kalijah Cansey is a really twitchy guy for a defensive tackle, and that he will have some plays where, just when you're charting it from the offensive perspective, you're just going to put an X there and say, like, well, 8 just kind of wrecked it. Like, well, I don't know. It didn't really matter. He hurdled the guard and tackled the quarterback before he could hand the ball off. And I don't know. We'll just try better next time. So he has that going for him that is very unique and sort of a thing that you don't see day in and day out in college football. But I think really the strength of the rest of the line is that they're going to rotate probably 8 deep all game long. And they're all good. Like, there's nobody in that rotation that is not a concern or a worry for another team. And I'll be perfectly honest, like, the really funny thing is that the players that everybody's talking about right now as sort of the standard bearers of that defensive line, Haba Baldonado and Cansey, they aren't the highest rated recruits on it. Those are the younger guys that haven't even really gotten a shot to play yet. Guys like Dayon Hayes and Elliott Donald. And if you start to get some of those young guys playing like they're capable of, I don't know. I don't know that teams are going to be able to have an answer for a line with that much talent that can just rotate through it all game and keep guys fresh and keep coming. One of the things that I think, you look at like a UCF game plan against Pitt, or what Josh Heupel does at Tennessee now, where you just try to run 1 million plays and tire them out. I don't think that's going to work against this defensive line this year. They're too deep. You're going to have to find a way to block them when they're fresh, and that's going to be a big challenge.
So as Mountaineer fans, we feel like WVU fans are going to make their presence known at Acrisure Field. It pains me to say that it's still Heinz Field, but I'm trying here. So, do you feel like Pitt fans are going to have a big turnout, or do you think Mountaineer fans are going to turn out to be just as loud as Pitt fans?
I mean, I expected to be probably about like Pitt Penn State was in 2015, 16, where I think it was about 80-20, but you could certainly hear the visiting crowd. But the one thing is the way that Pitt sells the tickets, the West Virginia fans will be all spread out. And so, it won't be like a visible block or anything like that. Also, the colors match. So, you won't even be look at the crowd. You won't even have any idea who's who. It'll just be what you can hear from the crowd. So it'll be a fun atmosphere. I think that's the thing that I really like about these rivalry games is when you do get that, it's not just the visitor section where there's, 10 or 20,000 visiting fans taking up a good portion of the stands. It makes it for a fun atmosphere and environment. And, I will say this, like every Pitt fan in that stadium is going to have a West Virginia fan in eyesight. Right. I mean, like that's what's good about it. That's what I love about this kind of game. And that's one of the things I think people are looking forward to.
Honestly, that's my favorite thing about the college football environment is we have season tickets to West Virginia home games, and we get to interact with other fans all the time because people sell their tickets, and you end up having an Oklahoma fan sitting right behind you, and just the friendly banter, a little bit of friendly trash talk here and there. It's always fun. That's what makes college football sports great because college football fans travel, and you have the diehards showing up to games. So Pitt WVU, I think, is the best of it. But college football just as a whole has such a much better atmosphere than pro games, in my opinion.
Yeah, and plus, it makes me miss, rivals and proximity because we're from West Virginia. We have season tickets to WVU games, but we live closer to Pittsburgh than we do Morgantown. So I just miss playing old rivals that are close, that you actually have the option to go to the game because you don't got to like get on an airplane. So it's going to be exciting to see what it's like. But next question, Pitt was 11-3 last year. What's your prediction for this year's team? Do you think they're going to take a step back slightly? Because 11 wins, that's pretty tough to do back-to-back years.
Yeah, I think that we'll take at least a small step back, probably 10-2 or 9-3. I think that the trip to Miami is very tough. That's a very talented team with a good quarterback. They've got Tennessee coming in here, going to be extremely motivated after a weird loss in Neyland Stadium last year. So I think those are two games that I would probably pick Pitt to lose right now. And then, it's college football, so you're probably going to win one or lose one that you think you should win. That's about what I see from this team. That trip to Louisville is also an interesting, Malik Cunningham's a really special athlete. That could be a tough test, and a lot of that comes early in the season. I mean, and look, I'm not counting this game as a win either. Week one, in college football, anything can happen. Rivalry game in college football, anything can happen. So I certainly wouldn't say it's in the books that what is it, about a touchdown favorite now, or maybe a little bit less, right? I think that's a nod to the talent level that Pitt has amassed, while also very carefully calculating the odds that like weird stuff can happen here, and nobody feels real good about that first win until it happens, especially when it's against a quality opponent.
Yeah, and we actually did our preview for WVU season last week, and ironically enough, me and Tyler both marked this game up as a loss. But, I don't think it's a bad thing if WVU would lose this game. I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of get WVU to get their feet underneath them and kind of match up against, the quote unquote big boys and understand what that's like. And, if you get beat up a little bit in a rivalry game, that should put a little bit of a fire under your butt to continue this season out strong. At least I hope so.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, even though I'm picking Pitt, I think it's going to be close. I really do. And anytime, there's possibility of a close game, you never know. You just get a ball to bounce your way, and who knows? It might go to the other team. So, with that being said, do you have a prediction? Do you have like a score or how much Pitt might win by?
I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be no, I would be very surprised if Pitt comes out and opens like a more than 2 touchdown lead in this or something like that. I expect it to be the kind of game where Pitt is probably ahead for most of it, but that West Virginia will be in a position where they only need a couple things to go right, to make some noise at the end of it. So I don't know, maybe something like 27-17, 27-20, somewhere in that realm where, it's really only a big play or two away from getting real nervous for the Pitt fans. And that's the other thing to talk about the sort of psychology of being a favorite if you're Pitt is that that can be a big negative if you get that you're leading the whole game and I don't know you like muff a punt or something and then it's in the end zone and then a big play and then you're like what just happened and there goes the lead and then things get real nervous, real tense, real fast and so yeah, I mean I can see stuff like that happening. I do think if I had to pick, I would pick Pitt to win and probably by no more than about 10 points, but Pitt is certainly a very talented team and can score and can keep teams from scoring. I have a hard time predicting blowouts in week 1, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I see it from the West Virginia side. I think it's just kind of too early for all the changes that we ended up making over the offseason, even though we did have the whole summer with all these new guys. I can definitely see a costly mistake or two that just throws the game and puts everything out of contention for us. And hopefully it's a learning experience, like I said earlier.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to talk about basically what everyone is most excited for heading into week 1. Basically, what are you most excited for in this first game? Brandon, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So my 3, I think, are pretty chalk, but my first one, JT Daniels and the Graham Harrell offense, obviously getting an upgrade over Jarrett Deggy is huge. Getting Neil Brown to stop calling offensive plays is probably just as equally as huge. So I have those 2 as my top. I'm excited to watch the offense this year. I'm excited to have games where we're not watching an offense sputter out all the time, go 3 and out for quarters at a time. And hopefully we get some 30-point games, which seem to be few and far between unless we're playing some, whatever they're called, FCS, junior college type school, week 2 or week 3 of the season. Number 2, I have our athletic linebacking core. I feel like during Neil Brown's tenure, a lot of the times our linebacking core has been extremely kind of more downhill, run focused, stuff the middle type linebackers. And now we actually have 3 or 4 guys who can run, make plays sideline to sideline, and should make the defense a little bit more exciting, help us out against tight ends, which is something that has traditionally killed us. Slot receivers, we have the athleticism to help cover them a little bit. And just, make plays in the backfield quickly. We haven't really had that in the years past, and I'm just excited to see that speed back on the field. And my third one is the backyard brawl is back. And I think that's enough. I think that's self-explanatory. It's been too long. This should be something that happens every year, regardless of what conference Pitt and WVU are in. I would like to see it be done later in the year. I still think this should be a November game, even if we are in different conferences, but still I'll take the backyard brawl being back as one of my most excited things on my list.
Yeah, I'm with you. Go ahead, Alan. What'd you have in mind?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the rivalry to be back. I go back and forth on the end of the year, beginning of the year. One of the things I really like about it being at the beginning of the year is that it feels it does sort of give you that big start to the season vibe that you don't always get when it's Albany. You get you get that. And Greg Gattuso is the coach at Albany, is a really good dude, and so that's like an unfair shot. But whatever. It's a team that can get everybody fired up. And then the thing about it is by putting this game at the beginning of the season, like you can build it up and you can make it a big deal and you can get everybody fired up for this game. And if you win, you are super excited about this and you are, find a place to put a trophy in your trophy case and talking all kinds of crap on social media for a year. And if you lose, you're going to turn the page next week and be like, look, that was fun. And now we got business to go to. And that team that loses this game is still going to have all their goals for this season right there in front of them. They can still win their conference. They can still, go to a really good bowl game. And so I think that's, one of the things I like about it being at the beginning of the year. And just the whole pageantry of it. I'm excited to see West Virginia's uniforms, which look beautiful. I'm excited to see the West Virginia band. ACC teams do not travel with their bands, and so we get like maybe one visiting band a year. West Virginia marching band is pretty good. So I don't know, come up and play Country Roads. That's cool. It's a good song. And I'm generally excited to see for Pitt if they can turn the Kenny Pickett era into something bigger. Right? Is this going to be remembered like the Pitt teams of the early 2000s where they had a really good year with Larry Fitzgerald, or they had a really good year with LaShawn McCoy, but there was never any continuation of that. There was never any sort of sustained success year in and year out that came out of having those really good players. There was a spike, and then it was really back to mediocrity. Can Pitt turn that really good year into something more and get the program back to, look, it's not going to get back to Tony Dorsett and Dan Marino and winning national championships that's probably not a realistic goal, but can it get back to being a team that's talked about being a ranked and relevant team every year in college football, to be a threat to win its division and go to a conference championship every year? I think that's within Pitt's grasp if they can build on the momentum that they had last year. And so I think there's pretty high stakes for Pitt this year, and I'm excited to see how they handle it.
Yeah. My three are basically stuff we've talked about. It's been a decade since the Backyard Brawl has been played. I'm just excited to see that rivalry back. JT Daniels making his debut. We've hyped him up. WVU fans have hyped him up all off season. We finally have a bona fide quarterback again. So he does have a lot of pressure on him to perform, but I'm just excited to see him in a Mountaineer uniform playing against an opponent. But my last one is CJ Donaldson. CJ Donaldson, if you guys aren't familiar with him, was recruited as a tight end, and then they moved him to like an H-back role. And I have a feeling they're going to be using him in a lot of roles, fullback, tight end, maybe even halfback, and then have him, go out wide. Who knows? They say he has great hands. I'm just really excited to see a guy of his size with such versatility, maybe outside blocking for screens, maybe catching screens. I'm just excited to see a player like that, because WVU has really not utilized the tight ends or fullback position in years. And I feel like that's something that's really been missing from our offense. So I think it'll be interesting how they use him. But to wrap up the podcast, we just have a few over-under segments, and all the WVU-related ones I'll throw to Brandon, and all the Pitt ones I will throw over to Alan. So let's get into it. Brandon, WVU will pass the ball 60% of the time for the whole year. You have an over or under there?
I'm going to go with over. Just because I think that, we have an interesting committee of running backs. I still think the offensive line is still a question mark. I know we return all 5 starters. I know Wyatt Milam and Doug Nestor and Zach Frazier are studs. But there's several teams on our schedule, including Pitt, Oklahoma, Texas, that have great defensive lines. So I think it's going to be harder to run block against those guys. And then also our secondary is our biggest question mark. So if we end up in shootouts, we're gonna have to pass the ball more. So I do think it will be over 60. I don't think it's going to be a lot over 60. It might be like right on the nose 60, but that's my guess.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. So Alan, same question, but with Pitt, will Pitt pass the ball 60% of the time this year like they did last year?
Way under. I think maybe under 50.
Really?
I could see them making a big swing, and two reasons for that. One is that I just think they're going to want to run the ball. Second thing is I think they're going to win a lot of games, and so when you win a lot of games, you're trying to run the clock out, and there are especially they don't have the world's toughest schedule this year. There are some games where they should be able to really dominate in conference play, I think, and so they have the opportunity to have some big days running the football because they're going to be winning. And so I think that's a combination of the two things, that they're going to want to run the ball more. And then when you get ahead, you run. And so, I think they'll be way under 60.
All right. These next questions are just for September 1st, the WVU-Pitt game. Brandon, JT Daniels will pass for 300 yards, over or under?
I'm going to go with under. I think that's a lot to ask for someone's first game. And I understand 300's kind of easier to do in today's college football game, but I think, just with the atmosphere, the first game, the chemistry, it's going to be tough. I could see him going for like 275, 280, maybe, a couple touchdowns, a couple picks.
Yeah, I could see that. So, Alan, Kedon Slovis will throw for 300 yards. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I just, I'm just wondering why we're talking about JT Daniels like he's going to be the starting quarterback. I mean, nothing's been decided, right? I mean, I just maybe he'll have 0 yards. We don't know.
Hasn't been decided.
I was actually fairly surprised that Pat Narduzzi announced Kedon Slovis as the starting quarterback. I figured it would be one of those you figure it out when the guy comes out of the huddle kind of thing. So Slovis over under 300, I will say I think he can get there. Man, that's a pretty good number for him in this game. I will say under. I just think Pitt's going to be really cautious with how much they want to throw the ball, and I don't think it'll be under by much, but I think under.
All right. For the Pitt game, Brandon, will Bryce Ford Wheaton have? Well, he can't, but 1.5 touchdowns. Are you over or under for Bryce Ford Wheaton there?
I'm gonna go under.
Yeah, I'd probably go over, but under's fair.
Think so? I mean, I think Bryce Ford Wheaton's interesting. Obviously, he showed out the spring game, but it's still the spring game. And I'm still a Caden Prather truther. I still think he's the best wide receiver on the team. So I'm hoping that Pitt gives too much attention to Bryce Ford Wheaton and Prather kind of gets to show the stud that he actually is.
All right. Alan, I know Jared Wayne only had, I think 5-6 touchdowns last year, but I assume he's going to be the big target this year with Addison leaving. So do you think he'll have over or under 1.5 touchdowns versus WVU?
I think under. Wayne will be the deep threat for sure in that offense. But again, I don't think they're going to go deep a lot. And Kanata Mumfield is going to be the slot guy. And to me, this feels like a big Kanata Mumfield game where you don't want to give those big momentum changing plays. You don't want to be throwing the ball downfield and get it intercepted. You want to throw those 5, 6, 7 yard routes that are really high completion percentage. Let your new quarterback feel good and feel comfortable. And so I think probably not a big game for Jarrett Wayne, as much as I would think Mumfield and Gavin Bartholomew being really the guys to me that are going to lead the passing attack in this one. Jalen Barden also, this guy who didn't play that much last year, who is just a home run hitting specialist. He didn't play all that much, but I think every target to him was like a 70-yard pass or something like that. So he's a guy that kind of comes out of nowhere, and you really got to watch him and his ability to take the top off of defense. So I think he'll play a little bit more this year than he did last year. So maybe that'll take some away from what Wayne will see in that sort of downfield passing game.
Yeah, nice. All right, Brandon, this might be an easy one, but Tony Mathis will have 12 carries. You going over or under?
I'm going to go over. I think this is a tougher game to get some of the younger backs involved in. I understand that they've been on the team for at least 2 years, but Mathis, he showed that he can be physical. last year. And I think this is going to be a game where you need to be physical, not only because you're rivals, but also because that Pitt defensive line, like Alan has said, is really physical. They're really tough to beat. And if you're going to get any sort of run game going, you're going to have to break through any sort of contact that you get at the line of scrimmage. And he's the guy, I think, who's built to do it at this stage of his college career.
Nice. All right, Alan, Israel Abanaconda, I hope I'm saying that right. Will he have 15 carries? Because you think Pitt's going to run it a lot.
You got it pretty close. Abanaconda. 15's a lot. I don't think any Pitt running back had 15 carries last year. I think they'll probably split it up a little bit. This will definitely be a game where you'll want to rely on some older guys, and Vincent Davis is that guy in that room for Pitt. He's also definitely the best pass protector of Pitt's running backs. And so if they're, wanting to really, protect Slovis and minimize that lack of mobility as an issue, I think they'll want to trust Vincent Davis early. The way I see Abanaconda getting 15 carries is if Pitt gets up pretty big early and then they're just trying to take the air out of the ball. I could see that happening, but I think it'll probably be closer to 10 or 12 than 15.
Okay, that's fair. Last one for you two guys. First up, Brandon, Dante Stills will have 1.5 sacks. Over, under, right on the money. What do you think?
I'm going to go, I would say right on the money. I do think, if this ends up being a close game, and Pitt does end up passing more, I could see him being kind of the factor. And he's come in to the season noting where he wants to be more consistent and play every play with more energy. Now, it's one thing to say it, another thing to do it. And we did see last year where when he was on, he was the best player on the football field, but you need to take breaks and it has to do with conditioning. So I'm hoping that he comes in with that conditioning that he needs. And with the way that Jordan Leslie, moves around people on the defense, I think that will allow you to move Stills into a position where he can attack one of the weaker places against Pitt's offensive line, which isn't left tackle. I think that's probably one of the stronger spots there. So getting him into position to, at least cause some pressure could lead to at least, 1.5 sacks. So I'm going to say right on the money because I think that's reachable for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, last one, Alan. Combined, Cansey and Baldonado will have 3.5 sacks. Over or under?
3.5 is a ton.
It's for two guys, though.
I think for the two guys, I'd have a hard time predicting two guys over 3.5 sacks. Probably under, but I could see the whole Pitt defensive line being well over that. And I do think it's like you're talking about moving Dante Stills around. I think there will be some cat and mouse there as well. John Morgan, number 6, is a guy that can really rush the passer. And if you're super focused on those two guys, like he'll make you pay for that. And so I do think that especially if Pitt can get WVU into some 3rd and longs, that they'll bring pressure from a number of different guys, and it just won't be that first 4. And so I think you'll see a bunch of different players in on it, and the linebackers as well. Savassi Dennis is an all-ACC linebacker and a really good pass rusher. When they free him up, he has a lot of coverage responsibilities on early downs especially, but when they free him up, he really get after the quarterback too. So I think the Pitt will spread it around a little bit more. They might have a lot of sacks, but I don't think it'll be more than 3.5 with two guys.
All right. Yeah, that's fair.
And I the one thing I want to, talk about too, real quick when it comes to Pitt sacks is that, I like the way that WVU kind of moved around their offensive line, moving Wyatt Milan to left tackle. Last year, Brandon Yates, who might be starting right tackle last year, played left tackle, and he was really, really poor. He got beat by, it seems like, everyone. So I think if he was starting left tackle going into this game, I think, that combination would probably at least get 3.5 sacks because he was, not good.
Yeah, and I think Pitt's offensive line, if there's a weakness to it, I think it can be beaten straight up the middle, especially with odd fronts, and West Virginia plays a lot of odd fronts. I think we might see some Stills like down as like a 1 tech or something like that. and really trying to push that A gap backwards right at Kedon Slovis. And I think that is probably what I would be doing to attack that Pitt offensive line if I was WVU. Like, they like the odd front. They don't mind moving people around. Stills is definitely a big enough dude to play in there. And I think it's putting your strength against the weakness. And like you said, I mean, I just don't know if you put Stills up against Carter Warren. I think the best you're hoping for there is a draw. I think you can win other places, and I think there's an opportunity for him to wreck some things in the middle there for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I had. Brandon, you got anything else?
No, that's all I had. I think this was super helpful. I learned a lot about Pitt. I just knew enough from reading through some previews and stuff like that. But Alan, you are a guru. You have so much knowledge about Pitt. I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing all the wealth of information you have about the Pitt Panthers program.
Absolutely.
100%, man. We can't thank you enough. I love this. I always like learning a lot about the opponent before we go into the game. I mean, I feel like we know enough about our own team. We want to know what we're going to see on the other side of the field.
Glad I could bring that for you guys, and let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Thanks, man, and thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Bye, everyone.